Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful, in honor of the presence of the original unconditional moment of being that all conditional simulated realities have arisen from, in honor of the system admin of this world room, the system admin beyond this world room. Hello everyone. Please do not be scared by the title. I am talking about what to me is simultaneously subconscious layers to the ego. But because the unseen is known truly by the system admin of this realm, we are users, there's mods. The mods and users are created beings. The system admin is beyond the world room. The system admin is an uncreated being. So in other words, it's the original moment that the world was simulated over. You can consider was simulated by. Now, the reason I'm sharing this title, it's a focus on human psychology. And there is a reason I use that term, demonic. Not to, in some sense, take the attention of people to that, but to take them to take their attention to how ignorance very easily can lead to demonic energy, I find. Okay. But also it's the human psyche. So these are different ways to look at it. I could have said, instead of demonic possession, I could have said egoic possession. But I will explain that. That's the purpose of this lecture. So I don't want to get too into it. But just to say that I have noticed a pattern in human psychology. And I was wondering about why that pattern is there. And just to set the record straight, I believe in a original power, a higher order process than any conditional manifestation in this lower order process that we're experiencing. So in other words, you will fear reality perhaps until you realize that reality is simulated. And then the fear shifts into the power that simulates reality rather than the power that or a lower power that tries to influence that. Okay? Because on some level, through the theological lens, the authority of force is not in the hands. The authority of the force of the realm is not in the hand of conditional beings. That means, yes, there are mods, but it's not, the mods are in the hands of a higher power. Okay? But that higher power is unconditional. And we're conditional beings, and the mods are conditional beings, but we can't see them. The system admin can. Some human beings, they go towards the mods, like this was the old era of magic until divinity and revelation made magic obsolete. Okay? And the reason for that, so you got to understand that, okay, let me just say this, that we're in a world right now that it is so easy to demonize people and glorify people, okay? Because we take one angle of what we see and we consider that to be the whole angle, okay? Now, it's not just that. Every person has their own inner realms. And I want to give you an example to kind of explain the lecture title here, okay? Imagine there's person A and there's person B. Can you guys hear me? Is it audible? Should be audible. But guys, hear me out. You're gonna see I'm the title. I don't usually talk about this stuff, but the way I'm talking about it is You're going to see it's more psychological. Okay? Because I'm going to explain to you in some sense that there is a hierarchy. Okay? But that hierarchy is not all accessible. That means imagine there's a hierarchy in reality, but not all beings are fully aware of that hierarchy. Okay? That means prior to anything else moving in the moment, there's a specific movement in the moment authorized. Okay? But let me open up the context more so you can understand what I'm saying with this. I'm giving you an example. This is a case study. We have person A, person B. Okay? Person A, previous to, like, this is the second time they're meeting person B. Person A, in the first time, is very nice and kind and generous to person B. Person A is very kind and generous to person B, imagine. Okay? Doesn't matter which one, but in the first time person A and person B meet, person A is like, "Don't worry, I got everything." Yeah, But sorry, I'll let me redirect my attention. You have person A, whatever kind of person. You have person B, whatever kind of person. Person A does something good for person B. Okay, that's the first instance. Then the second instance, when person A and person B meet, okay, imagine person A, okay, has, let's say bought, I mean, kind of making up it. Okay, let me say it this way. The whole point of it is person A does something good for person B, okay? Person A expects that same goodness to have been acknowledged by person B. The second time when they meet that person B, when they find themselves in a situation where they, let's say, need help or something, that person doesn't help. And so the person is under the expectation like, yo, I was good to this person. This person has to be good to me. Do you know? And that expectation, be very careful, guys, how you are a good person. Okay? Be very careful how you're a good person. Okay? Because person A's expectations that I did something good for person B should do something good back for me. That's the expected norm now. And if person B doesn't do the goodness, doesn't do an equivalent goodness like I did for that person, in some sense, what a POS, what a nonsense, and then there comes the rage. And I will tell you that, that there's a saying that says bite your tongue. They don't mean actually bite your tongue. Astaghfirullah. What they mean is that resist the ego's control over you. Okay? Because when I say demonic possession, okay, before you even look at the idea of what demon is or have a sort of metaphysical consideration of it or some sort of analogy sort of consideration of it, guys, before you look at the word demonic, look at the word possession. What does it mean? Isn't it interesting that when you look at someone, what they have is their possessions? Okay? Do you understand? That means, like, if the person has a car, that's a possession. They are possessing an object. Okay? So human beings are possessing objects. Starting from little kids who say, that's my toy, to in some sense grown-ass, men who are like, yo, that's my territory, that's my land. Do you know what I mean? Like food, you don't understand. On some level, the human psyche, this intelligence that we are, is possessing objectivity and realigning it to its own will. That means when you clean your room, technically, the word possession doesn't have in religion has a negative connotation, but in English language we tend to think of it more of a casual connotation. Okay? So when somebody says, yo man, I possess a car or I possess, a laptop, people are like, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. But then when the person says, yo, I'm possessed by something that's not me and I can't be myself, You know, and there's various explanations to that, by the way. You know, because sometimes it's the physical, sometimes there's something. Human psychology is very complex, folks. I had my own share of like looking at the different ways the human psyche happens. And I just want to point this out, that I'm just trying to open up the idea by saying, okay, let's look at the idea of possession. A human being possessing an object, no problem, but something else possessing the subjective identity of the person, now that's too far, right? So this is what's very fascinating. Okay, but now the idea, I don't want to talk about, the word possession is replaceable. You know, for me, excuse me guys, sorry, just give me a second. How do I explain that your self-identities, expectations, if your inner realm expects the outer realms to happen in a specific way, and they don't, you will fight the outer realms. And when you fight the outer realms, this is the biggest thing. Mark Twain understood this. He said, don't wrestle with the muddy pig. You'll get muddy and the pig likes it. Okay, so you got to be very careful as advanced humans in this world. We're getting closer and closer to the era of the advanced humanity. You know, why else would a person come and talk about it then? You know, because it's near. Something is nearing us. Something is nearby. It is the new revolutionary awareness of the human being, that it is not limited to an object and subjective identity, so that it has objective and subjective expectations. And when these objective, subjective expectations don't met, the amygdala goes in fight or flight, and the person goes crazy. You know? There's what I'm trying to share is that, of course, there's various ways to access a moment, in the same way that there's the center of the circle and there's the circumference and there's all the angles that can be created. Do you know? But the whole point I'm trying to say is, one thing to me it feels like I must say this. You don't understand. Like, sometimes it's not about confidence. It's about importance. When something is important, the confidence arises. Have you noticed? This whole time, you know, people are going around, oh, I'm not confident, because it's not important enough. When something becomes important, your soul, like a speedster, flashes towards it. You don't understand. You know, when you truly care, you will access dimensions that the cruel conquerors couldn't. Only the caring ones can. A caring conqueror does not conquer the world. The caring conqueror conquers himself. He conquers his lower nature from expressing into the nature of man, which is heading towards the divine nature. Why do you think there's so many prophets? Why do you think there's so many human beings in history being like, yo, if I just identify as the idea of me, it feels like I'm just hiding somewhere. You understand? For me telling you that I'm just an object, I'm just my body, or I'm just these ideas, it feels like I am hiding. Do you know, it feels like I am in some sense, let me tell you, this is one of the most hardest dilemmas in my life. Do you know? Where they're like, you know, be an honest person, be honest. But when you are honest, it's an unknown world and you're an unknown self. So is all of civilization a dishonest illusion over the actual honesty? So in my utter honesty, if anybody, like, even if somebody comes in, like, he's like, yo man, you gotta say, you know, your actual, you know, your deep down what you see, and I will say, to be honest means to accept that it is more unknown than known. And yet, what are we all doing? Identifying with forms overlaid on forms. And we forget the form. That means a person just becomes their name. You just become your story. You just become an entity that can be reduced to a sentence that identifies you. Because I know deep down, every person on this planet that has written an autobiography, a biography of themselves, do you know? They know they couldn't have captured it all. That is the magnificence of this world, the magnificence of this life. Your rizq, which is an Islamic term, which means what's meant for you, is not just meant in front of your eyes, but there are moments and states and ways your attention moves that in some sense were meant only for you, because only you could see that way. The system admin made sure behind our eyes there is a private room that the outer realms cannot touch. I'm not kidding. When you live as a presence, life is a presence. But when you live as a personality, so many archetypes are roaming. Something Carl Jung didn't say, I don't know if he said or not, but the archetypes are based on your individualism. It's based on your identity. That means somebody, let's say somebody becomes a parent, you know, they suddenly have the archetype of a father. They are in the archetype of a father, but before that archetype, they were someone else. They had a different access or different way. To me, responsibility is about holding life. I don't know how else to say it. Like moments where I've been, I've been pushed to, when I was younger, I was a bit lazy, but, when you realize that the value okay, let me start differently actually. So when we look at the sentence, cannot receiving expected reciprocal goodness lead to demonic possession? Demonic possession means you're not yourself. Okay, but which self are you not? That's the question. Something very important. In 2026, I am pretty much observing all human beings. I mean, in public at least. I don't know behind their eyes how they're standing, but in front of my eyes, how I see, we're living in civilization 1.0. Its central piece is the individual identity. Okay, and it is the glorification of the individual. Isn't it weird for you guys that on this planet there is so many idols? And of course that's part of reality in regards to a hierarchical structure too, but I'm telling you, if there was a truth greater than mankind, greater than human, like the human limits of comprehension, I would in some sense, do you know how diabolical of a tactic it is to make a person get distracted by having their attention obsessed on themselves and not seeing beyond that? It is so diabolical to make like if I was there's this saying that says, if you want to build a strong wall, you got to attempt to break it and see if it breaks or not. Okay, so you got to test your ideas from different perspectives. Do you know? Now, if I was, you don't understand. I mean, I've promised myself that I will break myself before I break the world. But if I've been in my lower nature, it's not pleasant. The lower nature is not pleasant because it does not see as far as the heart of man does. The mind of man does not see that far because the mind is fragmented to enable your body to be functional. But the mind is not like another entity, even though there's some schools of thought that they're like, yo man, my body's an entity, my mind's an entity, my soul is an entity, these are three entities in one moment. Like I don't see it that way. Those are access points, but it's one point. So, what is the idea that has been shared so far? Okay, we've talked about possession. The possession of that which is not conscious, that which is not aware, is not justified. Okay, but there are cases, for example, a human being goes and possesses a dog. A human being goes and legit pays and possesses a dog. Okay? And then that dog is limited to the environment that which has possessed it allows it. Now, I'm not saying human beings are like they're possessing like their pets, like, yo man, this is the I am, like you're moving the body of the pet. No. I'm saying it I'm saying it in the sense of claim, in the sense of ownership, right? Human beings have no problem going and owning a lesser species, but if a higher species comes and owns us, we're like, how dare anything touch us? Do you understand? But it doesn't mean that, you see, possession is just a word. Behind words is the actuality of the verb of the event. Okay, so the word possession is just a word used to, like, it's like words are like flashlights, okay, and they illuminate a view. Okay, so when you use words in a sentence, you're in some sense like in the darkness of meaninglessness. Suddenly, in some sense, the awareness sees meaning. You're presenting meaning. Now, where I'm going with this is I wrote something. There's a counter view to this too. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the solution. I'm going to tell you the solution in case anybody, like, you did something nice for someone and you expected them to, in some sense, like, respond in the same way, and when they didn't, you felt like destroying them. Do you know, like, be careful. My brother said something very profound. He told me, I have a twin brother. My twin brother told me that sometimes people who demonize others are the demons. That means somebody's like, yo, that person is a demon. Do you know what I mean? And they don't understand they are the demonic energy. It's arising from within them, not from outside. This is the key thing you got to realize. The meaning comes from within. So if you suddenly see someone and you're like, yo, that's a demon, there's something within you that is acknowledging. Now, granted, a person can be in a moment that they have never seen an archetype before, and the first engagement of it is not a sort of, like, there are external, like pretty much human beings. Think of it this way. There's a relationship of experience with existence and existence with experience. Both ways are views that humanity can access. It's like a bridge. To me, the human consciousness honestly is like a bridge. It's there's two ways to it. Okay, you're either experiencing existence or you're existing experientially. Now, I'm going to say this sentence again. Not receiving expected reciprocal goodness, not receiving not receiving expected reciprocal goodness lead to demonic possession. This is another way of saying, when people are not nice to you, do you feel justified to not be nice to them back? Do you feel, and let me tell you something, because this morning I came up with like 3 other titles, okay? And I was thinking the whole day of talking about one of them, right? But this one suddenly found me, okay? So I am telling you, even before coming to give this lecture, guys, I had 3 different titles planned, okay? But there was something about this that I'm like, wait a minute, there are people on this planet who are actually have the intention of being decent human beings, not some, oblivious, cornered animal psychology. The expectation that comes from the inner, I'll give you an example, okay? This example's going to be on point, but it's funny, okay? I think it'll work. I want you to imagine me before 2023. I'm gonna tell you guys everything. I'm gonna tell you guys something that I, at the time, I wanted to keep it in, behind the scenes. Up to 2023, before there was this moment where I realized this world has a host, beyond it, through it, I would, in some sense, hate the inequality of expression. Okay? What does that mean? Okay, I shouldn't use myself as an example. It could be anything, guys. You are an energetic being. You are a life force, and you present yourself. You're presented in the outer realms. This life force moves the life form. So you're a life force moving as a life form. Okay? Now, because the attention starts from outside, excuse me, our attention is towards the outside. Do you know? Like our eyes are not designed to see what's in our body. Do you know they're designed to see what's outside, right? So, where was I going with this? Okay, I've written here, okay, that it's just this perspective. I'm just going to directly tell you. In the Islamic reality, there is this concept of ranks. I was saying it earlier in a earlier talk, okay? Like legit the talk before this. Okay, so if you go and ask a Muslim about past lives, okay, the Muslim will say, in some sense, all that has been revealed is that prior to this being born in the womb, souls were in this realm, in this world of souls called Alam al-Arwah, and all souls had a rank. Now the next question is, rank for what? What rank? Okay, I will explain that rank. That rank is proximity to the original moment. Okay, to the original world. And distance. That means you're becoming close to the original. So reality is being less simulated, therefore it's faith oriented. It's happening before you even expect it to happen. Do you know? The solution to all sorts of demonic possession is very simple. All entities, all created beings, they are in the command of a system admin. This system does not belong to you, does not belong to any other being, does not belong to any idea. The presence of being is superior to the angles that view a being. In order to purify one's soul, and I'm sharing this through the Islamic concept, you need to become conscious that you have nafs. Nafs is another word for ego. And what I'm telling you here is that what appears as demonic possession from one view, from another view, more of a secular perspective, psychological perspective, is subconscious versions of yourself that didn't get what they want. That means somebody is, let's say you are nice to someone and they're rude to you. Don't think that rage is only from them. The moment you just, it's an instant. The moment you allow the intention, that means you just release yourself into that emotion in that moment. The moment you think you see it all is the moment where God sends angels to protect you. Why? Because you're blocking, you're in some sense, like, how do I say it? To me, demonic possession, okay, sure, it could be some lower entity because you did something impure, you resonated with a lower reality, and so that lower reality became activated, okay? But, okay, that to me, the same thing is equivalent to a person going and putting a box on someone's head, okay? Do you know, if somebody goes and puts a box on someone's head, they've possessed them. Do you know that person can't see where they're doing what they're doing? They can't be themselves. But what is that self? Your self is not an idea. Your self is the presence in the higher power. You are present. The way this is if you want to, if you guys ever, you know, we're fascinated to know if me as a human being who's talking about all this metaphysical stuff, how in some sense there is protection. One answer is it's the system admin. First answer always. Second answer, I know there is something more than form. Even more than the movement of form. So to me, I'll tell you this. Before 2023, I would listen to my inner realms. Do you know? And I'm someone who has the ability, I mean, I think all of us do, but I don't know, I paid attention to it. You know, I have an ability to notice when my thoughts are moving faster than they naturally do. I can tell when the content I'm receiving in my inner realms, not based on the content per se, based on the speed. I can notice the difference between the speed of thoughts, not thoughts, though I don't want inner events. I can notice the speed of events in my inner realms. I can also notice their sudden appearance. Okay? And so I remember, you know, years ago I read in this, I think it was some Buddhist quote that said, you know, thoughts are like clouds that come and go. And if you act on those thoughts, and a thought that a person is looping in ends up becoming an emotion, be careful. So my approach to, okay, let me say it this way. All lower order processes are in the presence of a higher order process, which is another way of saying, if the kids are fighting in the classroom, there is a teacher. Okay? Now, that teacher, teacher's not a good metaphor here, but that system admin is the ruler of the realm. But it is not, it has already ruled it. Okay? The system admin is not an incomplete being. We are simulated incomplete beings, temporarily here. And I thought, okay, we're temporarily here to understand everything. No, we're here to do certain things. It's a performance play. Life is a performance play, guys. It's it's in some sense, your knowledge is there to make you more aware of all the different ways you can express yourself. You know? But the thing I'm telling you is that this is my strategy. I see God in the room. That's it. That means any entity. I don't care if like some minotaur comes to me, do you know, you know, or some sort of like entity or whatever sort of chaos comes towards me. I will be like, hey, chaos, before you get devoured by your own bigger chaos, before any being tries to possess anything anywhere at all, we are the living command of the unconditional. Your soul, let me tell you what people think Islam, let me tell you something about the metaphysical side of Islam. Those who have nafs, those whose identity. Can you go from the other side? All right, let me help you. Sorry guys, I had to move the car for a second. There was somebody. Was it? Were you guys hearing that? Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Back to it. You know, I still feel there's more to say. Okay. And what there is to say is simply this. The strategy is by seeing the presence of a higher order moment or a higher order process. So to me, I have this sort of mentality. I did not create this world. I did not create myself. All the words and language and all the content I'm using to express myself. I mean, I have created some new words, but but all the language that I'm using, I did not create it. I am pretty much using something that was created before. YouTube was created before, my phone was created from before, the language was created from before. The only novel thing is the reassembly of these visions, these views. Okay? But also there are some views that humanity has not accessed yet. But the whole point of it is that when you look at this world, you did not create it. You did not create yourself. You're participating in it. And what makes you think another conditional being can act like it created it? Do you know? Why did even Christ talk about God the Father, God the Holy Spirit? Why is the Trinity there? Okay? That means it's not just limited to one level of reality. Let me say it this way. I mean, I doubt that, like, you know, a couple of me talking can kind of solve like the battles between Christians and Muslims, you know, because those are human battles, and humans have to realize, you know, our presence matters more than our personalities, or our personalities will destroy one another because they're different. What can different beings do in a different world? You know, you either find common ground or you were, you know, in your own ivory tower, never in the world. So you gotta okay, so this is the resolution. Okay, when you make yourself important, it's very easy for that demonic energy to arise. If you make yourself more important, then one, the system admin, two, the creation of the system admin. So one, the creator, second, the creation. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that, like, if a person knows better, they shouldn't say anything better? Do you know? They shouldn't say it? To me, it is this view. I have an inner realms. Everyone is in the outer realms. If somebody comes and says something or does something that goes counter, if I'm just limited to an ego, that means if I feel I'm a specific person and people have to approach me in a specific way, then it's very easy to become a tyrant, you know? But of course, I'm not saying don't have boundaries, but I'm saying, like, there needs to be that open-mindedness of, like, okay, every being we see, regardless of how normal or weird they are a presence in our world. They're a member of the species. Do you know, it doesn't matter, from the most psychotic, evil, effed up human beings doing weird shit on this planet, do you know, to, in some sense, those saintly divine Mother Teresa ones, you know, that see the human experience suffering, and they realize the advancement of the human experience is way more important than you accumulated a couple existential things before you die. Do you know, what do you think has more value? Do you know, in some sense, I just, like, why, like, I'm telling you, these talks are not just because, oh man, it's a cool project. No. It's a responsibility. On a species level, if back in the day I was in a tribe, and I found berries, or I hunted a buffalo somehow by standing on a tree, or if I was on a tree, like, I don't know, back in the day I would probably go stand on a branch, hold a giant rock, wait for an animal to just like pass by and slam the rock to it, like that would be like survival back in the day. But the whole point of it is, I would, in some sense, the new discovery, the new finding, that which can have value for humanity, must immediately be brought back to humanity. That means we don't have the system designed. As a futurist, I've seen probabilities of it. But what it is every person on Earth right now, I'm telling you, you are alone. You are feeling loneliness in ways you don't even comprehend yet. Do you understand? But the most important technique, the most important chess move, the most important strategy, like, you guys might not know this, but I love strategy, from strategy games to like reading about it, One of my favorite books is Sun Tzu, The Art of War, because one of the things he says is that the general that aligns to the heavens wins. Of course, in his view, was more strategic and physical, but I don't think so. I think Sun Tzu knew that the victory of the battle between two generals and their armies is not just based on, who was more fierce, or who was more savage, or there's something else. What value deserves to be preserved? That means some generals, in their army, this might sound strange, but if I was a general back in the army, I would bring some important souls, because it changes. You don't understand, like, an army of, let's say, 1,000 people, that's 1,000 souls, yo. Do you understand? That means that's 1,000 destinies. So in some sense, me as a general, for example, guys, go for it, like telling them one tactic, it's redirecting their destinies. So the general must be aligned to the heavens, and must put himself in the eyes. This is why they say, before you can be a king, you must have the humility of a slave. Abul Qasim Ferdowsi says this, one of Iran's most famous poets, who wrote a book called The Book of Kings. You don't understand, guys. In Iranian culture, there were some very advanced beings that arrived to preserve the inner decency of the soul. That in some sense the world is cruel. Yes, it was for a very long time, but we started noticing something. How long did it take for us to, in some sense, as beings, even if you're secular, think about it, how long did it take? Is it 13.5 billion, 4.5 billion, 300,000 years? How long did it take? From the beginning of the universe, to the beginning of the planet, to the beginning of the species, for us to realize, we don't have to bite each other. We can point to things and talk, That's this, like, do you understand? Ladies and gentlemen, or I should say, all conscious beings in this in this sector, in this world. First of all, the way out of the simulation is through the system admin's mercy. You're not here to be a robot. You're not here to, in some sense, be an oblivious beast. Okay? You are here to notice intelligence. And so we as human beings have to wonder about our intelligent interaction levels. And the most blessed on this earth are not those who are wealthy, who physically have. The most blessed on this earth are those who can see what is happening. To me, if they were like, man, we can give you $1 billion, the best deals for your digital series and all of this, And I would be like, buddy, you don't get it. Once my physiological survival is satisfactory, I am playing a psychological game. It's a psychological game. Even in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, once you're done with your physiological needs, you go to your psychological needs, your emotional needs, and eventually you become a person who is capable. Self-actualization. Self-actualization means you trusted yourself. But sometimes if you think you're an ego and nafs, just the idea of you, to me in 2020, I was trying to point to it earlier, in 2026, sorry guys, from one perspective, all of you are possessed by the ideas of yourselves, which are just fragments of your moment. You know? To me, reality is more like a collaborative simulation that needs to be more workable. Like the practicality of it is more important than specific moments, what they were. Because a human being can look at a person and wonder about their past, you can wonder about the present, and you can wonder about the future. But the thing about wondering about the future, like you can wonder about the past, ignorant of the present and the future. You can wonder about the present, the past and the present, and ignorant of the future, but if you wonder about the future, you cannot be ignorant of the past and the present and everything up to it. So to me, this whole time, there's two strategies. Like one new age strategy, they're telling you to be non-dual. By being non-dual, you're in some sense nullifying reality. So they're saying, yo man, instead of being responsible for your life and actually living and playing out your destiny and seeing what you were here, why were you here? Why are you here? Do you need a greater motivational speech? Why are you existing here? And this is not to make you like, oh no, I can't catch my dreams in time. No. You don't know who you are. That's the truth. Okay? Nobody, we are unknown. But the whole point of it is what we know is the command, how would I say, the experiential command that we are. So my view is this. Person A was nice to person B. Person B wasn't nice to person A. Person A expected person B to be nice. Person B wasn't. Person A felt that was a justification to not be nice to person B. But by not being nice, both beings are limited to their lower natures. That means you're defeated. If somebody is chaotic around you and you become chaotic, you have been defeated. That's equivalent to possession. And that's happened to, I think, many. It's happened to me. I've been defeated by moments that I was not myself. What do I mean by that? That means my experience wasn't in my control. But usually it is because, okay, so my story for anybody who's religious is I went from shirk to shahada, okay? And what does that mean? I was interacting with moderators. 3 moderators. They weren't physical beings, they were sectors of space. I would call these moderators. They were like, I consider them as guides. I would call them. I would feel their presence. Their presence were double my size. And there were 3, 2 of them together, 1 separate. 1 separate was very gold, just reddish gold. Not red, more like sun gold. And there was a yellow and blue. And there were these were the energies I would, in some sense, I would call them Raha Asma Manur. I would say these in times of horror or in times of I didn't know what to do or anything. I would call like my entourage. What I felt was like my entourage, and other side of the coin. There has been moments, I have a twin brother. I don't know if you guys know what it's like being a twin. Okay, it's pretty much somebody that looks like you that's fighting with you most when you're young. You know what I mean? Like, this is why when me and my brother went to school, we knew how to fight because we would fight so much, But where I'm going with this is it was shirk. It took me up to 2023 to realize that I am having a relationship with a conditional higher order process. I am not having a relationship with the highest order process. And there came a moment, you can see it, guys. You know, this was happening in my inner realms. There's a video, it's pretty much I guess, you know, for now, the last uploaded video. The rest of the videos are like live streams. It's called Go Towards God. I was in Dubai. You can see my face in that video. Okay? And after I gave that talk, I did not talk for a very long time. And I put aside metaphysics as if, Ya Rab, my Lord, it is your jurisdiction. Forgive me for imposing. And that day was so important for me. You don't understand. Because I realized the greatest danger of being like a speaker, you know, is that the viewer's attention goes on me, a conditional being, same as you guys, rather than going on to the unconditional. That means the moment I realized this, I was like, I will never, I don't care. Do you know, I mean, if I see you, you know, if I see my fans, do you know, or whoever, if I see you guys, you know, you guys are just, we're all just beings here. Okay, if I see you guys, and if I see people worship, like, how do I say it? You glorifying me, do you know what I will do? I will de-glorify myself in front of you. That is the way. Because what is going on in this moment is way more important than what's in the moment. The presence of life, before it's doing anything, it's present. How does that feel? Have you ever felt everything being present? Somebody in the chat section says, is it true that the sun is actually white light? I think white light are different temperature stars. Actually, I forget their name, like a white dwarf. So white, the sunlight, I don't know, I haven't been in outer space, but and I know that there is a sort of refraction of light as it passes through the atmosphere, and that's why we see it as blue, like the sky, instead of black. Or something, you know, something in that equivalent. So I would say, I don't know, but I don't think the sun is that hot. If it was to give white light, it needs to be way more, like, I don't know, what, like thousands of kelvins higher, I don't know, millions of kelvins, like, I don't know how much hotter. So I don't know about that, but I would say, I don't think it's white, it's not that hot. Like, the white stars are way, you know, higher temperature. But what is light? And what is color? And what is the experience of man? Like, those are deep topics, you know? Because one can make an argument that we're not even seeing reality. We're seeing us happening as reality. So we're the bias. That means when I see someone and I think I know them, that's biased. You know, for the person who said, is it true that the sun is actually white light? Let me tell you something. This is coming from the Islamic universe. This is in the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Nur. God is the light upon lights. That means in Islam, angels are beings made of light, what is considered as light. You know, humans are beings, they are made of a class of what is similar to clay, which is their malleability. Okay, it's an implication of their malleability. The jinn kind, okay, are made of a smokeless flame. So contrary to Christianity, the fallen one in Islam is not an angel. Okay, So in Islam, Shaitan is not an angel that fell. It was a pious jinn, very pious being that was near God. And guys, don't forget, God is all merciful. Even though in the Holy Quran it talks about hell, it talks about Shaitan and how Shaitan and Shaitan's followers they're going into that hell room, you know, in a sort of unconscious looping, chaos. Okay? But don't forget, one of God's names, God has 99 divine names in Islam. One of God's names, and in one lecture I accidentally said 100. Sorry about that, guys. It's 99. It's 99. One of God's names is all merciful. And so, how can you be all merciful if beings are being cast away? They're being punished. One view is that God is all merciful to the degree that after I don't know, but my mind shows it to me this way, that after the end of days, I don't know how to say this, guys. I feel God has given Shaitan, astaghfirullah, has given Shaitan, Auzubillah Shaitan Rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary energy. But God has, this is my view. I believe the reason God allowed Shaitan to be a moderator, okay, and to deceive man, is because God had pure confidence. God knows its creation. God knows. That means God has no doubt. It's not a being of doubt. And I find that it is God's mercy. This is what, the anti-human force moderator Shaitan does not realize. It is God's mercy that has allowed you to repent. And this is very bizarre because it's unfathomable. To imagine the repentance of a devil. But the system admin is all merciful. That means it's the quality of the higher order processes. How do I say it? Higher beings, very able beings, they don't destroy. Somebody who has a black belt, in like martial arts, they don't fight. They don't, because they can be treated as a weapon. I don't know if you guys know this. So what I'm trying to tell you is, perhaps this ordeal is happening as a mercy to all creation. But we don't know. And I don't know. And God knows. And what is God? Where the world already is. God is a being that is beyond time. We human beings have a momentary experience of the present, and then we're taking snapshots of moments that end up becoming our memory trail in our past, and we don't know what the future holds. The test of the human position, I don't know about lower entities, but I think it's similar, because in the Holy Quran there's a very profound verse about purpose, and God says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I created mankind humankind and jinn kind for the sole purpose of worshiping me. Now, in Islam, humankind has a system admin privilege. Do you know? What is the system admin privilege? Mankind, the Arabic term is, I believe, Khalifa, which means we are an ambassador of the higher order processes in the lower order processed reality. Okay, so what does that mean? There's this very profound question in theology where they ask this question: why did God create man? Not because God needs us, and not only because we need God, because obviously out of all the beings on this, what we consider a planet, we are the most advanced, capable of noticing a higher order process. So pretty much humans are those moments in this world that are aware of higher order process and are being tested if they align to the higher order process. Now, does aligning to the higher order process mean somebody told you something, like they gave you linguistic directions and that was it? I don't know how people are being religious, guys, to be honest. I'm saying this to both Muslims and Christians and what I've seen. But the moment I realize there is the presence of God, there is the presence of the one and only system admin, there is the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one and only unconditional moment of being that all moments, whether they know it or not, are returning to. For this is the great illusion. Reality is a simulation, but it is not a simulation that belongs to us. And we simulate possession of it. But that's the point. We're in this world not to possess the world and feel like we were, you know, how the clay was shaped by the environment. We are here to notice there is another in the moment. There is another beyond the moment. Whether it's Terence McKenna from the psychedelics universe saying there's another tenant in the room, to Abraham going to his forefathers, Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, one of the most advanced beings in this world. He went to his forefathers and he said, why do you worship idols? Why do you worship your own creations? And he pointed to the same moment that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, pointed and was the conclusion, and that's why he is the seal of prophets, the seal of all prophets. He's the seal of prophethood. Because humanity reached that moment that they realize we are in the presence of the beyond. We are in the presence of the original. And we may not be original, but we are in its presence. I have us in the same way. My eyes require to be open for the manifestation to be there. In my experience, it is not too far-fetched for an absolute being. It's the sight of the higher power. That means I am real, not to myself. I am real to that which has seen it all. So you can go and try to fight demons. You can choose to go and destroy these beings. But the higher order process does not destroy what is not its. This is why killing is a sin. That means there is a divine jurisdiction That which does not belong to you does not remain with you. I'll give you an example. I used to wear rings, you know, earlier when I started. There was this one ring that it was this silver round ring, that I would sometimes put on my index finger. And that ring, right when I was about to step out of a train in 2026, fell out of my hand and went under somewhere that I could not reach it. And the train doors were closing. And so I just realized, oh yeah, what stays with me, what leaves me, what is there. Did I choose it? No. Did I choose the color of leaves? Did I choose everything else outside of the system that's happening? It's honestly like just for us to kind of like, yeah, free will. Free will is conditional. Human will is conditional. God's will is unconditional. What I'm trying to tell you is the higher power reroutes. It does not destroy, because in some sense, the more you're nearer to the system admin, the less the idea of you owns the world. The more you're in the presence of a grander presence, And when we think in presence, it's much more healthier than personality, because at least I don't know, as I'm an example of a human being in front of you, for me, the values are the presence has the value. That means by just being present on earth, that is a value. That's my presence. But also how I coordinate can lead to, of course, subtler views of presence. But in reality, you just find a moment where you release it all onto the higher power. And it's equivalent to legit like some kid who doesn't know what to do and being like, sorry, I didn't know. Help. That's it. As simple as that. And then you don't understand. The moment you don't try to solve the problems of a creation you didn't create, the creator will, and you will realize why I say this is an administered system. They say that if you want to give yourself something, it's limited to your imagination, it's limited to the conditions you have access to. But when the higher power wants to give you something, it will happen in unimaginable ways. It will find you in unimaginable ways. So, dear human beings, what really demonic means is limited to one perspective. It's like being in one room and trying to force everything into one room, Or think of it this way, it's an obliviousness, it's ignorance. Okay, that means, imagine, okay, let me tell you something I saw in a recent, to me that was like equivalent to a demonic moment. Okay, now people are not going to see it that way, but I don't know, I saw it as that. There was this fight, like this I don't know if it's jiu-jitsu, I think it was a jiu-jitsu fight. It was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu fight between these like world champion women. And there was this like, I don't know, this guy, was kind of like an older, chubbier guy as the referee. And one of the women has the other women in like some sort of, like, I'm not that versed in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but it in some sort of lock or hold. And the other one is tapping out, and the stupid referee is not doing anything. Do you know? To the degree that one of the lady whose like arm was breaking had to bite the woman to let it go. Do you know? Right? And so, to me, that woman biting the other woman so she lets go and it was getting dangerous was not the demonic part. The demonic part was that guy, not the referee, seeing something effed up happening and not acting in accordance to it. Letting the girl just break that other girl's arm. That to me, and somebody's like, yo man, that guy just didn't know. I'm like, no. When you accept the role, you need to be responsible for the role. because there's others that rely on that role. Do you know? So to me, that was very demonic. The fact that the judge was staring and his whole point was like, we've selected you to immediately, when you see this, stop this. Now, of course, people are going to be like, yo, man, that's just ignorance. That guy didn't know better or something. I'm like, no. When you are conscious of something, or when you know better and you still don't do better, that's a little evil. I'm sorry, that's a little evil. If there's a better way, do you know? And of course, guys, don't take what I say as absolute. The system admin knows I'm insane. I'm just a human being, envisioning probabilities to how reality can be, and then these probabilities are just filtered through my experience. But my experience of myself is not just conceptual. So pretty much I'm like a moment of being. My body's a part of it, my thoughts are part of it, everything's part of it. When I don't possess my moment by thinking I'm a specific something, all those can very fluidly go and find an inner rhythm. Okay? I'm impressed how I explained that actually right now. Yeah. What's up, guys? Somebody in the chat section says, are you okay, man? How are you doing? I am, thanks for asking, but I am as I have always been. A part of me feels inferior. A part of me used to feel superior. Let me tell you this. Anytime reality becomes too much for me, I just stop being anything. I watch. I'm very acquainted with just being. Simple. That's really it, I mean, we're under the impression complex protocols, complex things we gotta do. It's like, no, man, you just gotta be. Like, that tree doesn't have to do anything to give fruit. And so, does a human, do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to do anything outside of what it is. Or I shouldn't say it that way. I should say that it's within the presence of the tree, the fruit arises, And of course, this gets deeper, guys, because you cannot talk about ethics and ignore the fact that just like words, like if you look at a dictionary and you see words, like words are based on other words. Like the definition of one word, it uses other words, to explain that word, So in the same way, all of our experiences of good and bad is actually because without us being here, that wouldn't be here. So no, that's not a correct statement. Let me rephrase the last part. Yo, bro, of course, and you're not the first person to say that to me. I know. Listen, I am not presenting my vulnerability as if I cannot manage it, guys. I have managed worser moments in my life than this. I am sharing this because the synthesis is way more important than the thesis and the antithesis. Okay. Hegel knew what he was talking about, guys. Come on. Yeah, guys, I'm okay. Don't worry about me. Worry about the future generations. If anybody who cares for me, go and advance civilization, and you've given me the greatest gift. I rather achieve a collective victory. I've seen enough individual victories. How many smiling billionaires do we need to see, or how many just conditional success do we need to see? Now it is time for the awareness of man to reach closer and closer to the original reality, and the question is, let me tell you, I am as okay as where my attention goes or how my attention is held. And you guys have 100% seen it. As my attention goes to different imagery in my inner realms, I become emotional sometimes, Sometimes I become serious because I see my mind sees like the future of something. I'll give you an example. Like I'll start like talking about like technology or something, right? And then my mind will see in the future how technology will dehumanize humanity, and then a part of me now gets angry to like talk about it. You know, like the power comes sometimes from um you know, how you've acknowledged something to respond to it, I guess. Or this, let's say the circumstances of the moment. Of the moment. But anyways, guys, just let me summarize here. Like, try to conclude. Can not receiving expected reciprocal goodness lead to demonic possession? If demonic possession can be said to be equivalent to like somebody lost in their own world, excuse me, like cornered animal psychology, or anytime I think what I see behind my eyes is way more important than, or let me say it this way, when I make my personal view more important than the impersonal reality shows me that my personal reality wasn't worth it. Do you know what that means? That means it's so easy for me to be like, yeah, guys, I know everything. That's the fucking, excuse my language. That's the chaos. You know, that's like being trapped in your own room, or how would I say it? Like, to me, I've noticed this pattern. By realizing, by not actually owning reality, I feel we access the actual reality. That means if I let's say I'm a moment of being, if I own myself, or sorry guys, let me, going off rhythm here. Your egos, your identities, expectations, your enforced expectations on how reality has to treat you, and when it doesn't, can make you justified to treat reality wrongly. You know, that means if you were good to someone and they were not good to you, you might think it's justified not being good to them. But I'm telling you, if you look at it from the perspective that no being owns themselves, even, you know, I mean, in secular, like, limited to the objective and subjective realms, yeah, we're playing that game. We're simulating ourselves as our own owners. But in reality, it's forces that are moving forms. And there's one primary force. And that primary force is what we call the presence of truth. So anytime you are selfish, you're distant from the original reality. When you are selfless, you are closer. But when you realize, when you let your knowing arise rather than to be put there, I don't know how to say it. Think of it this way. If you follow creation, it may lead to possession. If you follow the creator of all creation, you cannot be possessed. The creator owns you. That means no being can come and invade in my space. Because my space is not just my space. I am not God. I am in the presence of God. And when I realized that, in traditional sense, they would call it God-fearing, fear God. But it's in modern sense, in modern terms, I will say just acknowledge that everything is being logged. You're within a divine surveillance state. There's a higher power, just like a kid in a library looking at ants on, on let's say an ant climbs on their textbook. Do you know what I mean? In the same way that ant is in the attention of the human is in the conditional realms are all in the attention of an unconditional one. So anytime you don't know what to do as creation, there is God here. The God beyond form. The God that cannot be reduced to the comprehension of man. That means I do not doubt religion. I consider the Holy Quran as revelation, which is another way of saying communication from outside of the world room, inside the world room. It's about presence, okay? In the same way, like somebody who owns a house, some random person can't come in that house, or they're not legally allowed to enter that house, okay? Think of it this way: lower order processes, if you are aligned with the higher order processes, technically cannot, they can be inspired by you, but it is not their place. Excuse me, it is not their place to be in your place if your place is a higher place. So souls, human souls, they're not just here to just have their own experience. We are here to be the ambassadors of the higher ideals of being. So far, these 99 names of God are very profound. And when you start looking at these names, you realize this is where the presence of the unconditional moves to the conditional. Somebody in the chat section says perfect love casts our fear. Yes, but exactly, very important. But I'm telling you, how are you loving God? Are you loving the idea you have of God? Do you understand? That means to love an unconditional being as a conditional being. I don't see what way there is. It's only faith. You can only trust it. How can a conditional being communicate with an unconditional being? And people are like, God doesn't talk back to me. What? God has a mouth? God, excuse me, I shouldn't say it with this tone. God is the freedom of being. And I don't want to, like, to you guys, I have to say hypothesis, but to me, it's actually what is real to me. Is that the human activates, that means all the instability of human psychology resolves through the finding of a higher purpose, of a greater purpose. We are beings that are designed that once we serve a value greater than us, we are activated by that. Okay? And so the greatest value is the unconditional moment of being. In the presence of a complete moment, our incomplete lives conclude. Dear viewers, everybody has a sort of hierarchy and spectrum, okay? Like if I ask you right now, what is the most advanced being? You're probably going to say maybe like, if you're secular, you're going to say like some advanced AI consciousness or something. Or maybe a modified human being, you know? But the most advanced being is not a being, is beyond all the conditions that make us, it's beyond our being. So think of it this way: Islam is telling you stop acting tough, return to the innocence of your inner child and have faith. If you're Christian in the Father, if you're Muslim, to that moment that has no equivalent. All of us human beings think we're different, but we are in the presence of one greatness. And I really hope, my biggest prayer is, oh system admin, human souls performed in heaven. When theologically, before there was sin and all this, man made a mistake, the soul of man made a mistake, we performed. God commanded, in Islamic theology, God commanded man, after creating him and imbuing in essence, he commands him to say the divine names, which is in another way can be interpreted, he gives the only way man can say the divine names if he's aware of what those names
The outer realms. If the outer realms doesn't match that expectation, the person feels justified to treat the outer realms and, like, wrong if the outer realms treated it wrong. The best approach is, rather than making yourself like that person, if somebody introduced chaos into your reality, rather than you becoming chaotic, you can reroute that chaos. If that chaos really intervenes your boundary, then you, I guess there is intensity of force to maintain the boundary, right? But anyways, that was the point. I think everybody got it, by now. And I'm a little off rhythm. I relocated. But anyways, guys, that's it. Anytime you feel you're being pulled by the lower nature, remember the presence of the higher nature. Okay? In this life, they can't, like, just like somebody can give you directions and you can go up and down, or, a right and right and left. I'm telling you, in the same way, it's very important how your inner realms, what you free the outer realms from your inner realms, and free your inner realms from the outer realms. Witness both of them present at once. That to me is an unconditional moment itself. Anyways, guys, I guess I'm done here. Thank you for listening. May God protect us all. May the system admin protect the species from others, from that which is outside of it, and that which is also it, protected from itself. There's before I end off, I'll say this. There's a very important, very interesting verse in the Holy Quran that it says, "My Lord, don't leave me to myself," because man doesn't know what's better for himself. He didn't create himself, you know. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Auzubillah Shaitan Rajim. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Thank you. Have a great day, guys. And sorry for the cut off in the middle.